Ooh, I noticed something. So, I have different character models on the screen right now. There's actually a other art style that they used to have. I thought that was pretty cool. And then you can switch between that and the new one. And if I go back, it shows it like this. It's pretty cool. So this used to have one, and then they made another later. That's so sweet. I like both of them. Pretty cool. Alright, I'm going to continue with the story now. So switch back to new, and then I'll go to load. Look at that. Next one. Here we go. Ooh. I also switched the text to fast. I didn't know that was a thing. Oh. Breeze. Anyway, there were both girls and guys here, so press 3 and that'll be faster. Plus, we had people over a wide spread of ages, adult, high school, and elementary school. Even if we just talked about our own lives, the other three kept listening attentively. I think I'm finally getting used to all of this. Jessica and Maria have grown more than I could have imagined in the past 6 years. To be honest, I was feeling a bit uncomfortable, but talking like this, I guess that on the inside, nothing's really changed since back then. I agree. You haven't changed a bit, even after 6 years. Even though your body's gotten gigantic, you're still a kid inside. I'm a kid too! I'm a kid too! Well, even you aren't gonna be a kid forever, are you, Maria? I mean, you're gonna transform from a kid into a cute one, but lady, aren't you? And when that happens, that flat as a board chest will reach Jessica's level, huh? When that happens, you gotta let me touch. Oh my goodness. I promise. Dude. What? I'm not reading that. No, Maria-chan. You can't make that kind of promise. That's bad, bad, bad. I promise, so I'll let him touch them. I keep my promises. Always keep them. Okay, I guess I'll talk to you in a few years. Like a decade. Maria, you really are an earnest good girl. The guy you marry is gonna be really lucky. Hey, stop trying to change the subject by making it sound pretty. Maria, that promise never happened. Never. That promise is cancelled? As I thought, without Mattergoon and Naruto Quartet, this group of cousins just didn't feel complete. These 6 years have been kind of lonely. That's true. We didn't really goof off like this. Still, we did have some pretty constructive conversations, right? Stuff about preparing for our future, exam taking, finding jobs. Oh, I'm so sorry. Now that I'm here, we just talk about stupid stuff and mess around. But I'm having more fun this year. That's true. I agree. This year's the most fun yet. Maria's sincere words probably spoke for everyone present. George and Iki stroked Maria's head, and she giggled like a happy kitten. You gotta tone down the lewdness, Ushiromiya. Weak and battler. Weak. Pardon me. Your meal is ready. A timid knocking sound and the equally timid voice of a young woman came through the door. Jessica answered brightly. Shin, come in. You remember Battler, right? Jessica stood up from the bed and opened the door. There stood a servant girl who must have been about our age. It's been quite some time since we last met, Battler-sama. It's nice to see you after 6 years. It's me, Shin. Trembling a little as she noticed me, she bowed deeply. Ah, Jessica had me surprised, but look at you, Shannon-chan. You've turned into a total beauty too, haven't you? You're too kind. Still, the food on this island must be really nutritional, huh? What are you eating? How are you training to get foods that big? You still have to. Oh. Why are you like this? With both hands poised and saliva trickling from my mouth, I closed in for the sake of justice and my personal honor. I'd like to point out that I don't suffer from some strange disease that makes my lymph nodes itch until I scratch my neck open, and which can only only be prevented by. Okay, this is just a Battler style method of communication. If I slowly close in on her like this, odds are 8 or 9 out of 10 that I get slapped or clobbered, right? So I can use this Battler-sama original technique to spark a gag like that and break the ice. Well, it also means I really do get to touch them on that 1 in 10 chance though, right? like that had ever happened. The counter straight. Lost her old head in embarrassment when she realized what was going on. She just stood there with both hands politely joined in front of her, not even trying to resist or cover her. Hey, I wasn't planning on this. Please hit me right now or I'm seriously gonna... Which is why I was glad that Jessica chose that time to drive her elbow into the back of my head. Yeah, ow! Thank you so much, Jessica. Why are you thanking me? Seriously, my bad, Shannon. I almost got overwhelmed by your exotic chest. More importantly, anyone who gets that close has got to be a Lester. Yes, a molester. You gotta fight back when people do that. But you are an important guest, battle Sama. Now look here, a pervert's a pervert, whether he's a guest or not. A girl's chest has got an air defense identification range of about 10 centimeters or so. What the? When someone trespasses within 2 centimeters, that's already invasion of airspace. So you better scramble the jets immediately and give them an instant slap. I couldn't do such a thing, because we are, furniture, but of course she didn't want her breast touched, but if the guest so desired, she was prepared to sacrifice herself to suit her wants. A girl like this needs some urgent protection. To think such a devoted girl still existed in this era. It's enough to make a man dizzy. But no! Oh, I'm coming at you with a pervert face again. Knock me down. Look out, pervert on the loose. This gag can't end until you deliver the punchline, so slap me. Please, hit me! I cannot fulfill your request because I'm furniture, but if it were an order, I'd obey you because that is my duty. What in the world? I don't make it order. The next time Battercoon tries to touch your breast, counterattack with a slap. Got it? Yes. As you wish. From now on, that's what I'll do. Please understand, Battercoon. Shannon announced this while bowing elegantly to me. Her expression was green. I gave her a thumbs up to show her I was fine with that. 6 years ago, you might have been mistaken for a servant's daughter who lent a hand at your parents' work, but now you're a full-fledged adult servant. How long have you been working here? Well, I've had the pleasure of serving this household for about 10 years. She's... Can't give her name or a Shannon. Now here's another name that's far from typical for a Japanese person. Back in the day, I was a kid myself, so I accepted her name without paying it much attention. Thinking about it now, her name's pretty unusual, even though she's not a member of their Ushiromiya family. Maybe it's like a servant's professional name or something. If so, that might explain why her name's so similar to Kaneko is a canonic name. That kid I met earlier in the Rose Garden. She's a long-term servant who served here since she was 6 years old. Her experience has changed so much that I couldn't match her to the person of my memories, but we both know each other 6 years ago. That shy part of her had always been there, but she did seem to have developed the order you'd expect of a girl her age. Especially, okay, I thought this novel didn't have any adult content. That kid we met earlier, Kankun, is her little brother. He's not exactly my little brother. Still, he loves me like a big sister. He didn't cause you any trouble, did he? He's the same as always. If only he were just a bit more sociable. I apologize if he caused you any trouble. Nah, he didn't cause any trouble at all. As a fellow man, I understand how you can get at that age. It's no surprise he's unsociable. I get called that all the time too. I get called unsociable, just like him. You aren't unsociable at all, Murray, Sam. Why did you not kid? You said the meal was ready, right? Yes. I'm sorry. Your meal has been fully prepared, so please allow me to guide you all too much. Shannon bowed again formally and returned to her duty room. We realized that if we made her stick around for any more light conversation, it would actually make it harder for her to drop. We got up off our butts, but we wouldn't interfere with her work any further. Shall we go to the mansion? Everyone's probably hungry, right? Should I age restrict this? It's a little... Yeah, I'm really looking forward to going to San Swoosh. That guy was apparently a chef at this famous hotel, so he's super good at cooking. Ooh, I can't wait. Let's go, Maria. We're gonna stuff ourselves like pigs. Ooh, stuff ourselves like pigs? Oh no, seriously, okay? Because he's always just joking around. Okay, let's go. Under Shannon's guidance, we headed towards the mansion. If being a pervert's a pervert, then why did you do it? Met once again by the magnificent rose garden, we continued onward as the intimidating mansion of the Ushiromiya head family came into view. It had apparently been built shortly after the war, so you could feel the dignity of almost a half-century hanging about it. The building was gorgeous on the surface, but old as it was, equipment such as AC and heating were apparently quite frail. According to Jessica, midwinter was especially tough. What with all the drafts? Haven't these people ever heard of a kokatsu? Kokatsu? I'm gonna be honest, that seems hard to go through. As we entered the entrance hall, and each servant greeted us. Now him I remembered. Genji-san, who had been working here longer than anyone, filled the role of head servant. Battle-sama, it has been quite some time since last we met. As our eyes met, he greeted me with a calm, composed voice. His bow wasn't as graceful or refined as Koda's, but despite its simplicity, it communicated his feelings very well. Genji-san, it really has been a while. You look well. Thank you, I have been quite well. In Battle-sama, you have become a splendid young man. You are beginning to resemble the master in his youth. I look like grandfather? Yes, that means grandfather was pretty popular with the ladies when he was young. From here on, I shall take Shan's place in the company. Please come this way. Shan bowed deeply and washed his sleeve. After that, we headed towards the dining room under Genji-san's guidance. Genji-san, just like Kumasawa-san, stood in stark contrast to us young people who had grown beyond recognition over the last 6 years. His appearance was exactly the same as in my memories from 6 years ago. It was as though time had stopped between since the last time we met. Genji-san was an extremely quiet and diligent person. He was basically grandfather's host aide or caregiver, and you might even call him grandfather's companion in many years. In fact, it seems he was by grandfather's side even more often than my late grandmother was. According to Jessica, grandfather trusted him more than many of his blood relatives. But I wonder how long he served. I never got the details, but I heard something about him being here since the very beginning when this mansion was first constructed, which would mean that he's dedicated half of his life to serving me. It's easy to see why he's so trusted. As he passed through a massive hall that extended up into the second story of a mansion with no separating floor, I spotted something that hadn't existed in my memory 6 years ago. Whoa! The art! That is pretty. Bushido. It was an awfully big portrait hanging right in front of the stairs that rose to the second floor. Without thinking, I stopped walking, captivated by it. Since I stopped so fast, Maria, who was following behind me, ran into my back. Ah, sorry. Hey, Jessica. Has that picture always been there? I pointed at the big, prominently split portion of the hall. Everyone else stopped, too. Oh, right. When you last came here, that hadn't been on yet, had it? When was it again? Oh, well, if my memory doesn't fail me, it was put on display sometime around the year before last. You are correct, sir. In April of the year before last, the master put it on display there, having previously ordered a painter to create it. Grandfather did that, so he paid to have it painted just for him, huh? The portrait suited this western mansion, and that woman, that elegant dress gave off a sense of refinement. I couldn't have guessed her age, but her sharp eyes and strong will she seemed to possess made her beautiful. She seemed somehow different from the composed middle-aged women you often see in famous pictures. If she had normal black hair, I might have assumed it was a portrait of my long-deceased grandmother in her prime. However, she had beautiful blonde hair and didn't look Japanese at all. So, just who is this lady? Maria answered that simple question enthusiastically, as though proud she knew the answer. Ooh, I know. She's Beatrice. Bea, what? Beatrice. She's a witch. Didn't you ever hear stories about her long ago? A witch? You mean the witch of this island? Is it Beatrice or Beatrice? I think I already said this, but Rakujima is a small island only 10 kilometers in circumference. However, that's actually pretty massive, considering that only the Ushiromiya family lives here. So only the harbor and the area around the nation was set up to be lived. Beyond that, the island remained as untouched as it when it was inhabited. The vast and empty forest of absolutely no space, like bones for the people passing through. To understand how dangerous that is, you need to forget your promises to the city below. After all, if you happen to fall down a hole on the depths of the forest and sprain your ankle, no one will come save you, no matter how much you cried your strength. Then, once the sun went down, the forest would be wrapped in complete darkness, since there were no streetlights. And since there were no signs, it would be easy to get lost and confused, losing your sense of direction inside that dark forest. Nowadays, most people see a forest as a peaceful place, but to the people of bygone eras, before the light of civilization drove out the night, forests were as geographically separated from civilization as the sea. They were oceans below the ground. Fishermen who go out into the ocean are putting their lives at risk despite their technical knowledge. In the same way, hunters who go out to the forest are in danger despite having specialized knowledge of their own. If children were to go play in such a dangerous forest, something terrible might happen. Someone's parents must have thought so. Maybe grandmother first said it, or maybe it was grandfather himself. Or perhaps the story has been passed down in this violence since ancient times. There's a terrible witch in the forest that must not get out. At some point, this ghost story of Rockinjima as well. This is the legend of Rockinjima's witch. That's why when we talk about a witch on this island, we're referring to the master of that vast and savage forest. Come to think of it, when I stayed at this mansion as a little kid, during those eerie nights when the wind and rain pounded on the windows, I remember being terrified by a story of the forest witch who roamed around searching for human sacrifices. So, Beatrice, Beatrice. I'm gonna call her Beatrice because he pronounced it a Bayo boy. When Aniki mentioned it, I missearched my memory and was sure I recalled hearing a name like that when I was little. I see. Still, I totally forgot that the witch in that legend had an elegant name like Beatrice. So, did grandfather go out of his way to have a portrait made, just because we grandchildren didn't believe the story? She's the witch from grandfather's delusions. Ever since he had this picture hanged, he's been having a harder and harder time telling the difference between truth and fantasy. To us, she's just a witch that exists in grandfather's mind, but to him, she's a being that exists on this island. It exists. What? He says he had that painting made because the rest of us would be incapable of understanding otherwise. The whole thing's creepy. Lady, this portrait is precious to the master. I beg of you, do not say such things in front of me. I know. Even if you didn't tell me, I'd never do something like that. Jessica glanced at the portrait with an irritated gaze before turning away. Let's go. We're making everyone wait in the dining room. Only a small portion of this island was controlled by the Ushiromiya family. All the lawless remainder was the domain of the witch Beatrice. You might even call her the true ruler of Rockinjima. I have felt a faint revival of that unsettling sense of misfortune, which I felt when I learned of the tutelary god's shrine being struck by lightning, and I remember that Kumasawa's hand tried to tell an ominous story about Rockinjima before Jessica stopped her. I don't know what she was planning to tell us about this island, but I do know one thing. It isn't the Ushiromiya. Goodness. It isn't the Ushiromiya family that rules Rockinjima. It's the witch Beatrice. That's right. After all, this is the witch's island. Battlord! You saw! When I looked around, everyone was already heading towards the dining room. I hurriedly chased after them. We walked up to the huge double doors that led to the dining room. Genji-san knocked. I had brought the children. Please pardon the intrusion. The doors were opened and we were invited inside. The dining room, which looked exactly like you'd imagine a rich person's dining room to be, had a super long table that was obviously positioned with no purpose other than to make the guests conscious of their rank. Our parents were already sitting in accordance with that ordering. You're late, brats. Hurry up and take a seat. The old man missed us to sit. Sure calls him a bastard a lot. The only gaps in that group of people were the spots we were supposed to sit, which only made us feel our tardiness all the more. The seat at the head of the table, called the incipient's chair, was for the most highly ranked, reserved for grandfather. It was still empty. He probably wanted to show up last for dramatic effect. From the perspective of someone facing the incipient's chair head-on, the seating order went from left to right, with the lower-ranking seats progressing in rows of two further away from it. So the left-hand side of the first row, closest to the incipient's chair, was where Uncle Kraus should have sat, since he was the second highest in rank. It looked like he hadn't arrived yet, so that seat was empty. Across from his chair, on the right side of the first row, sat the eldest daughter of the family, Aunt Eva, who was the third highest in rank. The left-hand side of the second row was for the fourth highest in rank. There sat Dang Dad Rudolph, the third of the siblings. Across from him, on the right side of the second row, sat Aunt Rosa, the youngest sibling. Sat Aunt Rosa. Okay. At this point, you might expect their husbands and wives to come next. But nope, the left-hand seat in the third row, ranked number 6, belonged to Jessica. Opposite her was George and Nikki. I sat next to Jessica, and Maria sat across from me. Then finally, next to me on the left-hand side of the fifth row, sat Aunt Natsui, the 10th highest in rank. Opposite her was Uncle Hideyoshi. Next to Aunt Natsui, in the sixth row, in the final seat on the left-hand side, sat Kairi-san. The seat opposite to Kairi-san was empty, even though silverware had been set there and everything. According to this ranking system, that spot was where Aunt Rosa's husband should be sitting. Even though he wasn't supposed to be coming, his place was made up. Normally, ranking systems of this sort give spouses equal positions as their partners, but the Ushiromiya family system can maybe it's a remnant of male chauvinism. If you start with the assumption that a woman's womb is just something to be borrowed, then the children of direct descent will come first, directly followed by the grandchildren. In other words, spouses have no blood ties and are therefore placed at the end of the line. It's terrible, but by this system, my grandmother would be ranked even lower than me if she was still alive. In their youth, they obey their father after they get married, their husband after aging their children. Whoa. There's the old saying, women have no home in any realm. Long ago, when I was still incapable of figuring all this out, I thought it was so great that we could all chat in our little groups, adult siblings with adult siblings and cousins with cousins. However, now that I can re-examine the seating order after growing up a bit, it stirs up some very complicated feelings in me. Aunt Natsuki, who was married to the eldest son and was the de facto number 2 in managing his family, sat to my right, which meant that she was 2 steps lower than me in the ranking order. It was hard to imagine what might be going on inside her heart. That's why I made a small apologetic gesture towards her before sitting down. How nice to see you, Badworkin. You've grown quite tall, haven't you? Oh, yep. 6 long years of eating well, sampling various cuisines, and deriving sustenance from Mother Earth's bountiful gifts. Hard work, but I pulled through. Growing just like a boy, I said. How tall are you now? I guess about 180 centimeters. But Aunt Natsui, that's where you're supposed to say, heck, sounds like all you did was eat. Huh? Oh, hey, I'm sorry. After a short pause, she did laugh with me, but it seemed she couldn't quite figure it out what she was supposed to be laughing at. This woman is Aunt Natsui. She is the wife of the eldest son of the family, meaning she's my father's older brother's wife. Is it simpler if I just call her Jessica's mother? It feels bad to say it like this, but while I didn't exactly dislike her, I didn't particularly like her either. She hardly ever spoke with us kids, and all my memories of her involve her talking to the adults about complicated things, with a scary look on her face. In fact, since we hardly ever exchanged words, I spent a long time trying to figure out how I should approach her, though my efforts seemed to have ended in failure. The silverware sat neatly on the table, but the meal itself hadn't been brought in. As a general rule, you couldn't start a meal until the person sitting at the head of the table arrived, so as long as the grandfather didn't come, lunch would be put on hold indefinitely. Not even the appetizers would arrive. Simply put, the silence in this room was caused by our parents enduring their hunger while they waited for grandfather to arrive. However, the grandfather, from my memories, would always show up on time to meals like this. He was the kind of person who would never be so late that it kept everyone waiting, especially after the entire group had arrived. Grandfather's pretty late. As far as I can remember, he was always strict about time. Well, that might have been true 6 years ago, but it hasn't been that way lately. In fact, he's off in his own little world so often that he doesn't even show up at family meals. Still, I figured he'd at least come down today. Then again, I feel a lot more relaxed and happy without him. Jessica! When her mother scolded her, Jessica stuck her tongue out and walked away. No way around it. Might as well look into our host arrives. When I glanced at the clock, I saw that it was almost 12:20. Let's say like 2 o'clock. 12:20. Okay. Ushiromiya Kinzo, the aged family head of the Ushiromiya head family. This man could be seen in the study. The clock had already passed noon, but he didn't even attempt to rise from his seat. With his spectacles on, he built up a growing pile of books with elaborate bindings, which he then read intently. He couldn't really say that he was having too much fun to stop. Rather, he filled the room with a sense of impatience, or perhaps a sense of impending danger, as though every second wasted was a tragedy. In the sealed room, a dense dust danced through the air, which was thick with the stench of chemicals that had exuded a mix of suspicious odors. Those odors were somehow sweet and heavy. If anyone with a normal nose came in here, the first thing they'd do would be to open the window and ventilate the street. The knocking against the study door had been going on for a while, a voice calling for fodder, sometimes mingled with the knocks. As Kinzo heaved a deep sigh, he snapped shut the old book in his hands and slammed it on the table. Then he yelled at Krause, who was still knocking at the door. "Silence! Enough with that racket, you fool! Who told you the door would be opened if you but knocked? I'll crucify the imbecile. Do you wish to suffer the same fate?" "Father, this is the day of the family conference, which happens only once a year, is it not? Everyone's gathered down below. Please come out." Krause called out to his father through the door. Kinzo always shut himself up in his study, hating it when nearly anyone, even his family, entered the room. For that reason, Krause had no choice but to call him from the corridor like this. "Largely, just who is this everyone of which you speak? Do you mean the fools trying to drag me out of here? Then kill them all. Tear them apart, use their bodies for firewood, and feed them into the witch's heart? This boy is crazy. What? Put a pot in that heart to boil the worm. Force the imbeciles who dare try to work me out of here to drink the broth of the apocalypse. I will soak their dregs with liquor. Where is Genji? Call for Genji. Have my demonic absinthe prepared. The whispering of the green fairy reaches me no longer. Chill! Where is Genji? Bring him here. What is this guy's deal?" On the other side of the door, Krause, Anjo, and Genji kept waiting for the master of the house, who stubbornly refused to come out. "Looks like he hates me to the core. My voice doesn't reach him anymore." Krause shrugged as though saying it's no use, and smiled bitterly. From the beginning, he hadn't really expected his father to respond to his calls. However, since it was the duty of the eldest son, he had tried as a formality. "Kinzo, son, your sons and daughters and grandchildren have come to see you, have they not? Could you just let them see your face, if only for a short while?" "Shut up, be silent. You dare to admonish me, Nanjo? I never told anyone to get you. I told them to get Genji. Now call for him immediately. Time is short, and the apostles are already readying their trumpets, so why can't you foolish sheep understand?" Kinzo slung an old heavy book against the table over and over. "Hi!
Hi, you want steak?
Oh, yes.
Steak?
Yes." Kinzo put his spectacles down and flew up from his chair. He spread his arms wide open as if to sing up to a packed opera house as if killing someone and yelled, "Why? Why is there always something in my way? I would throw it all away. I would offer up everything, and there's only one thing I ask in repayment. Ooh, Beatrice, if I could see your smile but one more time, I would plunder the smiles of the earth and offer them all up to you." Maybe dinner a little bit. "Ooh, commanders of the legions, locusts, scream the smiles of the earth. Cough, 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 cough. Everything's filthy, everything's irksome. I'd like to make this an hour long, though, so... However, much more I have to do. For that I will. Why must I suffer this impediment on this most precious of days? Cough, 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 cough. Maybe I shouldn't say the word cough, I should actually cough. Cough for Genji! Cough. Oh, man. That wasn't so good. I have no idea what he's yelling about. He's probably lost his mind by now. Crossing. Isn't it a bit harsh to say such a thing as roaring father? My father is already dead. There's nothing here but a phantom of what father once was. At any rate, as long as he has no intention of coming out, there's nothing here. Kinzo's son. Choking coughs continued to pour from the study. I'm going back downstairs. It would be a waste to let the crucifix prized griffin talent get any colder. It's one of the few things our relatives can look forward to when they come to his house. Krause spun around. He looked at his watch, mumbling and acting as though he had wasted time doing something he knew would be in vain. "Genji, son, father is calling for you. Keep him company." "Certainly. Dr. Nanjo, let's go eat. If we stay here any longer, the sweet stench will ruin our sense of taste." Without waiting for Nanja to cross from the stairs, Genji urged Nanja to go and eat. Nanja glanced through the study door across his back as the ladder disappeared down the stairs, then let out a deep sigh. Sorry, Genji-san, but please allow me to delete this in your hands. Yes, please leave it to me. Do what you can to avoid giving an alcohol. That's a habit that's far too difficult to break. Is Genji not here yet? Who dares keep Genji from coming? Ah, where's Genji? Call for Genji! Please, allow me to handle the situation here. Very well. Forgive me. Nanja about slightly descended the stairs. Genji watched him leave, then knocked on the study door. Master, it is Genji. Genji? Why have you kept me waiting so long? You're alone, I trust. Correct, I am alone. Kinzo returned to his seat and studied pressed an old-fashioned switch on the table. After a small delay, the heavy sound of the door unlocking could be heard. Kinzo was convinced that his family wanted to make a mess of the study, or perhaps someone had once opened the window for some air and ended up scattering things that, to him, were important research materials, leaving him in a terrible mood. Kinzo outfitted his room with a formidable lock, preventing anyone from entering. Without his permission, and thereby sealing himself in jail his own making. Genji, whom he trusted the most, was relatively free to enter the room, but even that didn't always hold. If Kinzo was in a bad mood, even Genji wouldn't be able to enter. Anyone else would be limited to holding a conversation through the door, unable even to see Kinzo's face. And most of the time, what they got could hardly be called a conversation. However, it just stood in trouble the rest of the family much. After all, it just wasn't worth the effort to disturb this aging family head, who was impossible to please and always stayed shut away, immersed in his research. Taking advantage of his refusal to leave his room, they supported his isolation, putting his care entirely into their hands of servants. Genji, unusual, I'm busy. Yes, sir. Genji headed to the corner of the study. Very suspicious-looking bottles, most of them as colors on display. They were actually liquor, but considering the shady atmosphere of this room, one might easily suspect that as being some ghastly poison. Inside the study, a mysterious collection of books gathered by Kinzo and broken to a mountain. They were bizarre, ancient, organic books, all of them either forbidden, cursed, or sealed. But if you tried to call them old books, Kinzo would fly into a rage and say, "Call them grimoires!" There were also many mysterious objects that presumably held some meaning with regards to black magic, like candles suspiciously melted and glowed into strange shapes. Many constellations drawn on a certain celestial globe containing quite a few shapes that would draw puzzle books and many of them glowed in today's night sky. The carrots were strewn about books containing many illustrations, all of them of a religious or mysterious nature, including some depicting demonic labors as subjects, or bizarre diagrams of dangers, or various dimension circles. And above all, sweet, poisonous smell filled the room, profoundly assaulting the eyes and noses of those who entered for the first time. Eventually, and must surely make a person go numb and lose their grip on reality. Inside that study, Genji could hear Kinzo's usual drink with a low train. No one would even think of drinking such an ominous, burger in that complex and morning glass unless someone first told him it was alcohol. He poured a little into the glass, then he placed a tea with sugar in a strangely shaped spoon and poured water from a pitcher over it. Strangely, when the transparent water was poured, the dark green liquid turned cloudy white. It was a strange optical illusion, as though the water had caused a chemical reaction and made the drink become even more inert as well as liquid. Then Genji added original flavors to Toba as fine-tuning his skills. There was no risk. Success was measurable, but he was most when he drank it, and it was taking Genji around the decades to learn how to do it right. Genji placed the glass on a tray, walked over to Kinzo, and by this time, Kinzo was gazing out the window. Here, master. Thank you. Kinzo had regained his composure and was now unrecognized, was a shouting, screaming, yelling man from a few moments here. Looking at this man from behind, he tilted his glass and gazed down at the scenery out the window. He projected a sense of dignity and intelligence. To allow Kinzo to set his glass down any time, Genji most smoothly waited behind Kinzo and to his left, as though he were awaiting that word. Then, without averting his eyes from the window, Kinzo held out his glass. There was only a mouth for remaining. There was not a gesture intended to set it upon the tray, but a motion to hand the glass over to Genji. Drink, my friend. Your words are too kind for me. No need for ceremony between us. Drink, my friend. Thank you. Genji respectfully received the glass and find it a little taste of contents. After that, he faltered tongue. I attempted to imitate your function, but no matter how I tried, not replicate it is. The way you make is pure relish. Thank you very much. It is the fruit of your guidance, Master. Kinzo smiled as well as subject. He refused to put aside drink even when asked to. However, he was not making fun of me. His smile was relaxed instead of chuckling at a close friend's old and unshakable habit. We have grown old together. I stopped counting the years long ago. It was tired with thanks to you, Master, that I have been able to look like this until today. Kinzo gave a faint smile as if to say he didn't believe me flattered. Until now, you are certainly exceeding love. My sons call me censure. Servants that were once many have all quit in fear of me. Only you serve me even now. Your words are more than I deserve. My life will not last much longer. My sons are vultures, so waiting for my inheritance to fall into their hands. Cross is a fool who squanders money like water, who throws away 2 gold coins to obtain one, and then he has the gall to claim that he's earned money. He does a slave to money and thinks of me as a mere chicken. When I die, she plans to use my bones to make a broth. That dunce Rudolph just wants to fool around with women. Rosa bore the baby of a man who came from nowhere and about whom we knew nothing. Jessica is incompetent and uneducated. George is none of what it takes to be a man. Badward is a fool who threw away the honor of the Ushiromiya family. He is roasting everyone. Then Maria is obscene to the eye. Dude! Savage. Why is the Ushiromiya blood so incompetent? Is there no one worthy to inherit the glory I built? Ah, of course I know. This is part of Beatrice's curse. I know it. Ah, you golden witch. Are you trying to take revenge against me in this way? If you want to hate me, then do so. If you want me to run away, then run. I won't let you go. 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 You belong to me. You must always be in my arms for all my life. You must stay in my birdcage for all eternity, whispering only to me. Beatrice, why won't you smile back? Ooh, oh, oh. Beatrice, oh. After howling, Kinzo choked once again. Genji set the tray and glass down and rubbed his master's back. Genji's facial expression did not change. It was always like this. Thank you, my friend. When his seemingly deranged fit subsided, Kinzo regained his composure once again. It was like seeing 2 different people, a wild Kinzo and a composed Kinzo, living together inside one body. And so, I decided I could not bear to spend my day remaining years procrastinating like this. If I have one final point to bet, then I choose to abandon it to the whims of the game's blood. The power of magic is always determined by those who take gamble. Like visiting a shrine at the hour of loss, ancient Japanese sorcerers can nail a cursed doll to a tree. Magic power is produced specifically because of the risk that whatever we see in the 7 days of first days, the greater the risk, the stronger the magic power will be. Many miracles have happened and it might be called the crystallization of a shocking magic power, with a low probability of occurring in astronomical risk. That Moses parted the waters of the sea was not a miracle of God. The risk of that desperate situation, cornered by soldiers on the Red Sea shores, weighed upon the scales of slaughter and gave birth to that miraculous magic power. If the same thing occurred again on the same scale, the sea would surely fail to part. After all, Moses was able to magnificently summon a miracle engraved on one of the countless innumerable results on the roulette of those with power. This is the force that can triumph over astronomical odds. Indeed, good fortune that can grasp miracles is magical power itself. To obtain this mighty power, one must face the risk of despair. Those who possess no magical power may call that desperation rather than event. However, people who truly do possess magic power can grasp hold of that miracle and make the enigma come into being. And if that power exists within me, I'll seize that miracle. I'll have a chance at making the wish I devoted my life towards come true. Kinzo looked up to the sky outside the window. He spread his arms as if feeling someone up in the skies. If only I were capable of grasping that miracle. Ooh, Beatrice, Beatrice, show me your lovely smile once more. No matter how much time passes, your face is not finished. I just want to see your smile, that is all. I'll return to everything. I'll return everything you bring. I'll return all the glory I've gained since that day. I don't need fortune, prestige, or gold. I'll return everything you gave me. I just want to see your smile. I beg you, Beatrice. Oh. It is not thanks to who yells became a scream, and then a wail. Kinzo slumped to the floor, tearing at it with both hands. Genji and Ushiro towards he walked over his master's lamentations. What in the world was that? I don't know how long this has been going on for. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the family's health is not at its best. He seemed extremely sad not to be able to share lunch with you all now that you have gathered for this event that occurs but once a year. Go to let the lunch begin. Certainly, I shall begin today's lunch, Dr. Nanjo, his father's condition really that bad? Couldn't he have at least said it? Let's see his face. It's more of a problem of mood than a physical condition, and for that, there is no medicine I can prescribe. Hey, are we talking about his mood again? You've got to be kidding me. We took time out of our schedules during the autumn season just to come and find out how he's doing. And now he's... Then you should be happy, Rudolph. You now know how he's doing. Or what? Would you rather take my place and try to persuade our ill-humored father to come join us? Are you kidding? Rudolph shrugs. Apparently, though Rudolph was willing to be indignant about how self-centered his father was, he wasn't particularly disappointed to be spared a face-to-face meeting. Doesn't seem like his mood will improve before dinner, Kraus, he said. I have no idea. If you want to know that, you should ask him directly, although I think his mood will improve faster if we don't bother him. Genji-san's the only one who can get grandfather out of a funk. It's pretty pathetic, though, making the servants deal with your own parents' bad mood. Jessica, don't speak out of turn. She planned for her complaint to be heard only by her cousins, but it had reached even Kraus's ears. Scolded, Jessica scowled and turned away sulking. If he's as cranky as they make him sound, he can't be that terribly sick, right? I mean, they're saying he's in a bad mood, but now he's got no energy, which at least proves he's got his wits about him. It's because grandfather has especially strong willpower. However, that doesn't necessarily mean his body would be able to keep up. Since last year, they keep saying that he has 3 months left. If the initial diagnosis was correct, grandfather has been prolonged by his life. Prolonging his life by willpower alone. It's right for us to worry about him. Lunch started with the family head's seat still empty. The man who should be sitting there had already grown old, and the brilliant glory which had rebuilt the Ushiromiya family in the span of a single lifetime was being forgotten. Even though they were beginning the meal with that seat still empty, no one felt it was that odd anymore. Oh man. I guess I'm gonna see that happen a lot. Whoa. The Ushiromiya Family Conference was held once every year on the first weekend of October. If a normal family were to hold a so-called family conference, you'd expect it to be nothing more than a reunion of fairly soon relatives who greet each other on buckets of sushi or something. However, part of the family's great fortune had been lent out to grandfather's children, and no one in this family was considered an adult until they had met with success in business, so this meeting literally was a conference. How much of the fortune was invested? What sort of business was conducted? How much profit was earned? As a result, how much of the fortune borrowed from the main family could be repaid? Or possibly, how much more would be borrowed for the future business ventures? What lessons had they learned, and what could they learn from their mistakes? It seems that topics like these were discussed very seriously in the past. My dad said it was like lying on a bed of nails. Apparently, it used to be a very serious family meeting where people were bathed in scornful and angry voices, and some people even got slapped despite their age. However, that had become a thing of the past. Now, with everyone pursuing their own business ventures and achieving success, it was becoming more of a normal yearly get-together. Even so, telling grandfather about recent events was extremely stressful. So while it was nothing more than a simple get-together for us grandchildren, it was still a real stomachache for our parents. The absence of the man who was the source of all this trouble, regardless of the reason, probably made today's lunch taste more delicious. The phrase, "while the demon is not around, everyone can relax," comes to mind. Anyway, let's introduce Jessica's father, whose face I haven't seen for 6 years. The man sitting to my father's left is his older brother and Jessica's father, Uncle... This name sure is easy to read. Kraus. Now that we've gotten used to this string of real weird names, our perspective is totally skewed. So Kraus doesn't actually seem that bad. It even starts to sound kinda cool. Just like with Aunt Natsu, I didn't have many memories of speaking with Uncle Kraus. He had never been one to chat with children, and I felt like he was always talking with adults, just like Aunt Natsu. According to my father's gossip, he was a spiteful and violent man. If what he said is true, Uncle Kraus used to be very domineering from his position as the oldest sibling, and was despised by all the other siblings. Though, despite that, those siblings all seemed to be chatting happily together. Oh well, even if their relationship was bad when they were children, sometimes when people grow up and live apart from each other, their relationships change. That's probably what this was. After all, they all had children of about the same age. By sharing the same family environment, they probably profited by exchanging opinions. Maybe because of that, a short while ago, the circle of parents began to discuss the exams Jessica and I would be taking. Jessica, in order to escape questions about exams from my father on her left, purposely faced right while firing off rapid series of comments, not giving him any chance to get a word in. Moving on, let's look at the end opposite from perhaps some of the others. In the very last seat of the table, an old gentleman with a sturdy physique sat facing Kyler's hand. This was my first time meeting him. I had only just been introduced to him, but it seems he's grandfather's personal doctor, a man called Nacho. Okay. I heard he used to own a huge clinic on the nearby island of Nijima, but he turned it over to his son and began living a life of leisure in his old age. He had known grandfather since the very beginning when the mansion was first constructed on this island, and had built up a relationship over several decades. I thought at first that the two of them might have gotten to know each other through grandfather's suspicious hobbies, but it seems like he was actually grandfather's chess partner. I see, that kind of hobby seems very like our grandfather, with his what with his love of all things Western. Najo's probably the only person who could enter Rockington despite being neither a family member nor a servant. He looked like a calm old gentleman as he listened to the discussion between Kyrie and the other women who sat near to him. Considering how long he stayed by the side of our short-tempered grandfather, his generous heart was probably nothing to laugh at. Still, even if he was a family doctor, having anyone outside the Ushiromiya family attend the family conference was a little odd. It made me think that grandfather's condition might have worsened so much it'd be a major topic of discussion at today's conference. After all, George said something like that just a second ago. Something about how we'd been getting continuous reports since around last year that grandfather didn't have long to live. It's nasty to think about it, but consider how rich grandfather is. At the time of his death, his wealth will suddenly be released, probably along with a fair share of our parents' stomach acid, and it'll lead to ulcers for everyone. After all, this sort of thing just gets messier when there's more wealth to be divided. There's a good chance they'll be talking about stuff like that at a family conference. Still, it's not like it's got anything to do with us kids. Finally, even though he hasn't shown up, let me introduce our grandfather. The person who should be sitting in that incipient's chair is Ushiromiya. It really sucks. Everyone else in the family has these weird names, but he's got this perfectly normal one himself. Oh, what? I've never heard the name Kinzo in my life. If only his name were written Kinzo, but he let us call him Goldsmith or something. I'd totally freak out. As you can probably guess by now, he's a frightening person with an extremely short temper. I'm one of his grandchildren, not his son, and I haven't seen him since elementary school. Oh, it's normal for Japan, of course. Don't know why I confused that. Thanks to that, I have no memory of being beaten myself, but our parents were apparently raised with an iron fist. That earlier conversation between my dad and Uncle Kraus about who should go convince grandfather to come down seems pretty darn funny once you know their background. You can't really tell grandfather's story without covering that pivotal event back before the Showa era. Okay, 1926 to 1989. Until the Meiji, 1868 to 1912, and Taisho, 1912 to 1926 eras, the Ushiromiya family was great and prosperous. They owned several spinning mills, making them rich enough to just double overlapping every day as the money kept rolling in. Incidentally, grandfather was a member of a branch family and had pretty much nothing to do with the main family. Not only was he way down the list of people who could inherit the headship, but he had hardly any contact with the glamorous main family. However, during the Great Kanto earthquake in the year Taisho 1923, the mansion owned by the Ushiromiya family in Odawara was flattened. The spinning mills in Tokyo were all burned down in a huge fire, and the Ushiromiya family lost most of its wealth and family members in an instant. Jeez. So once they started trying to figure out who the successor to the Ushiromiya family should be, they apparently found no one remaining except Kinzo and his branch family. In Kinzo's later reminiscences, he referred to this as good fortune, so great that it overturned fate. With that, grandfather's boring everyday life did a 180. He was entrusted with reviving the dying Ushiromiya family, which had lost nearly all of its wealth. However, just because he had been entrusted with this task didn't mean he could accomplish it. Apparently, those around him weren't really expecting much. However, this is when Grandfather began displaying his extraordinary talent and good luck. Grandfather used all of the family's remaining wealth, as well as everything from the hair on his head to his toenails, as collateral in order to borrow a massive amount of money. Once he built up a gigantic war chest, he immediately invested in business. It was like someone tumbling down a hill on a bike without any brakes, and then jumping onto a neighboring bike, and then another one, just like some crazy street performance. I'll bet everyone thought Grandfather had no business ability whatsoever. However, after several miracles and turns of good luck with coincidences piling up and every chance taking advantage of, he was suddenly in control of powerful connections with the occupying forces. At that time, I was going to say within, I don't know, with is okay, it sounds pretty good. At that time, he was both in the GHQ or the ultimate authority in Japan. Grandfather, in a twinkle of an eye, began succeeding in businesses under the protection of the occupying forces, quickly becoming very rich. By this point, it's probably safe to say that information, not luck, saved the day. He must have made some seriously deep connections with the occupying forces. Grandfather knew beforehand about emergency demands that would be made for the Korean War. No, it was more than that. He must have predicted those emergency demands from the very beginning, when he started investing his money. The history books make it sound like all of Japan made a large profit of the emergency demands during the Korean War, but that isn't actually true. Only a very limited number of the super rich played the money game and made an easy profit. Most of the citizens remained poor. In other words, Grandfather was a member of this extremely lucky group of millionaires. I'm pretty sure this all happened during the year Showa 25 to 1950 or so. The Great Kanto earthquake happened in Taisho 13, 1924, so that means Grandfather was able to revive the near-dead Ushiromiya family in only about 20 years to a level even higher than it had ever been before. With that, you'd think he revived the main family in Odawara, but for some reason he went and did something as crazy as buying an entire small island in the Izu archipelago. Buying an entire island is not something that you can ordinarily do today. However, Grandfather was clever. He contacted the GHQ and applied for the establishment of Marine Resource Base. He acquired this island as a business property, then tossed that project aside and claimed it as his own plot of land. After the war, there were prevention measures against food shortages, and having the sponsorship of the GHQ meant that nobody could oppose him. From what I've heard, the Tokyo metropolis of that day offered this land to him practically for free. This is some crazy history. Later, Tokyo made difficulty by telling Kinzo to return the land, but the pushy DHQ intervened. Lots of conflict. Anyway, it seems under-the-table bribes did their work well. In the end, the city gave up in frustration. Really was strategic with what he did. Grandfather, with considerable skill and good luck, managed to weather the stormy seas of that period, obtaining a vast fortune in his own island. Of course, it probably wasn't all luck. He was obsessed with all things Western, which helped him cultivate his English skills. He was able to use this to his advantage and sink his teeth into the GHQ. A mansion was built on the island soon after. This mansion, in fact, Grandfather, with his love of the Western style, made this once inhabited island a canvas upon which he could realize his dreams to his heart's content. He now had the Western mansion of his dreams, overflowing with emotion and atmosphere, and a beautiful garden featuring all sorts of roses. And he had a private beach where nobody other than himself would ever be permitted to leave a footprint. This would be a dream come true for any boy. After that, he made good use of his huge fortune, becoming a large stockholder in the extremely stable iron and steel industry, and was able to live an easy and comfortable life just using the dividends. Well, he's just that incredible. This kind of person usually has the ability to foresee and predict the future, or at least that is how they're portrayed after the fact. But Grandfather denies all of that, repeatedly saying that he was simply blessed with extraordinary luck. Anyway, even a ward like that can't help but grow increasingly eccentric when locked up alone on an island where all his dreams are made real. Everyone knows that he's had a Western obsession from the start, but none of our parents really know when his bizarre black magic hobby began. Did his love of black magic begin way back when he became fascinated with everything Western, or did his miraculous stretch of good luck while reviving his family cause him to feel mysterious power in himself? At some point, Grandfather began to make research of black magic his life work. He filled his study up with suspicious books, chemicals, and magical items as it became increasingly bizarre. From what I've heard, those around him morally watched over him, figuring that someone who had achieved such success in life had a right to do as he pleased. I said figuring, but there's no way that's true. They were probably just creeped out thinking that's disgusting. I don't want to get involved. Like, I thought that I just said there. I hope it wasn't that word. Anyway, that agitated period was the age of big gambles with both opportunities and risks. Let's say grandfather was born in this time period. He would have had no opportunities and would probably have advanced like a chess piece from mandatory education to college at a leisurely pace, never becoming more than an average salaryman. I was supposed to say salaryman? Salaryman. If that happened, he'd probably have sat somewhere half the take, talking behind his boss's back. No, not in a fancy dining hall like this, more like at a table in some bar. Then again, I'll bet his family conference would be a whole lot more relaxing if that were the case. Okay. Bye bye. Wait. Put my mouse on it. I think it shows up on the stream. Bye bye.